Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're talking about August 29th of 1997, which was Judgment Day in the Terminator series, and was part of our version of the Crisis on Infinite Earths in our game world, as well as Onslaught and an event called Genesis that DC published in 1997, as well as some stuff that we did involving original characters. But before we get into all of that, make sure you smash like, check to see if you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive in. The prologue to this one takes place in August of 1992, 5 years before everything that I just mentioned. In our last game, Necron was able to possess a body of a robot that we call Ultrabot 1.0, and he fought a trio of superheroes called the Continuum, who consisted of Superboy, who, thanks to Doctor Strange, forgot he ever was Superboy and is temporarily going by the name Powerhouse. Shadowstorm, who has super agility, lightning, and teleportation, personality wise is a lot like Batman, and Torch, who has super intelligence, fire powers, and super speed. Personality wise, he's a lot like Ozymandias from Watchmen. A little time has passed since last game, and the boys haven't had to tangle with Necron himself yet. But Necron's ability to manipulate robots means that the boys have been targeted by Sentinels, just like the ones we see in the X-Men comic books. It's also worth noting that in our game world, the Sentinels have been around for about 30 years by now. So you could go to a military surplus store in our game world and buy old broken Sentinel parts. The reason I mention that is by 1992, most police departments in our version of America have a few Sentinels laying around to help them deal with supervillains and vigilantes, which is how they think of the continuum, since the continuum are entering crime scenes, tampering with what the police would see as evidence, that sort of thing. So, that said, about once a week, the boys get tracked down by sentinels and have to fight them and escape. And we were particularly inspired by the pilot episode of the 1992 X-Men animated series. So we ran a ton of adventures where the boys are at their local shopping mall and then some sentinels show up. So many adventures, it's what players think of first when they think of this era of the game. So our heroes have been indirectly dealing with Necron, but now today they encounter an upgraded iteration of Necron. They fight him and lose. The hero formerly known as Superboy is knocked out, and that's the last thing he remembers. It turns out that this Necron is from 5 years in the future, so he grabs Powerhouse and drags him back to the future. Which brings us to the main plot of this adventure, which takes place on August 29th, 1997. The hero, formerly known as Superboy, wakes up strapped down to a table. He looks around and realizes he is in the local prison, but the entire facility has been assimilated. He can't move his arms and legs, but he can move his head. He looks left and right and he sees other superheroes strapped down to tables that are identical to his. They ask him to save them and lead them out of here. He's confused, and the heroes of 1997 think of him as a leader and a great hero, which he's surprised by. Necron enters the room wearing an even more advanced robotic body, but there is no robotic head, just Necron's real skull like head sticking out of the golden armor. Powerhouse slash Superboy makes a joke referring to Necron as Dollar Store Skeletor. And Necron tells him that his flippant attitude is about to be deleted. Necron injects him with what looks like liquid metal, like the stuff the T-1000 is made out of. Powerhouse screams as he is assimilated, and the other heroes know that they're next. Inside the body of Powerhouse/Superboy, tiny nanoscopic robots attack every cell of his body. Necron explains that his nanobots will prevent Powerhouse's cells from absorbing the energy that gives him powers. On the next table over, a female Green Lantern with long dark hair asks if Necron is shutting down the hero's powers so that they're defenseless. And another nearby hero named Smolder says, "Is he going to kill us?" Necron says, "No, you're going to be my army." And with that, Powerhouse gets up off the table, and now he has a new body of metal. So he looks a little like Colossus from X-Men. His skin is silver chrome, his hair is a duller, darker tone, and his eyes glow red, kind of like Megatron. And in that moment, Jay, the game master, said it was time to make a saving throw. So it's the willpower of Powerhouse/Superboy versus the potency of the assimilation process to see if he can retain his original mind, or is he Necron's slave now? So the game master rolls some dice behind the GM screen while the players are all on pins and needles to see what's going to happen. Because one way or another, this is going to be a turning point in the story. On Powerhouse's turn, he turns his head towards the other heroes and opens fire with heat vision. The heroes scream, and when the weird glowing red smoke clears, their restraints have all been destroyed. So the heroes all pile on Necron. The female Green Lantern grabs her power ring from a nearby table. She substitutes her omnipower for regeneration usable on others, acting like the party healer, giving everyone their hit points back. On her remaining action, she creates a force field around Necron. She was played by Heather Searfoss, by the way, and Heather had an interesting idea. Normally, a force field can be erected around a hero, and that hero can attack through the force field that protects him, but the villain's attacks can't pass through the force field to hurt the hero. So Heather asked if she could make a force field around Necron where it's sort of inside out. So putting the field around the villain means his attacks couldn't get through the field, but the hero's attacks could still hurt him. And in this instance, we allowed it. So everyone shoots at Necron, and the heroes fight their way out of the prison, fighting wave after wave of lesser Ultrabot soldiers. When they get outside, though, what they see is the crisis on Infinite Earths. The sky is red, and there are things from different time periods here. Some listeners may recall our crisis adventure and how there were things like prehistoric dinosaurs meeting heroes from the 30th century. Our interpretation of that is that, for instance, in the 30th century, one day dinosaurs are going to show up again, and that there would therefore be certain years where we would once again see elements of the crisis briefly. So August 29th of 1997 was one of those dates. Also, on this date, there's a being called Onslaught. And the idea behind Onslaught is that the conflict between Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto was sort of made manifest in physical form. So Onslaught, as a result, sort of looks like Magneto, but he's huge and spikier, almost as if Magneto was exposed to that mutagen from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 that turned original recipe Shredder into the bigger, spikier Super Shredder. And then at that same time, DC Comics published what was supposed to be a really big event called Genesis. And in it, we find out that when the universe was created, it was like throwing a rock into a pond, and a ripple moved out from that point. And when that ripple passed over Earth long, long ago, several mortal characters were exposed to that energy, and they became the gods of myth and legend. This ripple of creation itself was called the Genesis wave. And we find out it created the new gods like Highfather and Darkseid. The Genesis wave goes out to the edge of the cosmos and is then reflected back again towards the center. So, on another pass, the superheroes were created in the early 20th century. So, characters like Superman and Shazam all secretly derived their powers from the same source. Which, by the way, we thought was odd since Superman is so often said to have a weakness to magic. But according to the Genesis event that DC published, Superman's powers and magic are no different at all. It's as if there is no such thing as magic in the DC universe, and everything is just superpowers. But at any rate, I digress. Anyways, so in 1997, the Genesis wave is passing over Earth again, wreaking havoc. So there is a lot going on. And when the hero, formerly known as Superboy, sees all of this, he understandably thinks it's the end of the world. And the other superheroes here, who, by the way, refer to themselves as the new continuum, also think it's the end of the world. Just then, an older version of Powerhouse shows up. He does not have a body of metal, which makes his younger counterpart wonder if Necron assimilating him in the past means he changed time. Anyways, the older Powerhouse, who has a beard and is wearing the Superman logo on his chest, says there's no time to waste. He tells the younger Powerhouse to fly into the crisis area where different time periods are converging. The younger Powerhouse has questions, and the older Powerhouse yells at his counterpart, telling him to shut up and go. The younger one furrows his brow, then flies up, and away through a rift in time, which brings us to the epilogue, which takes place back in 1992 again. The hero, formerly known as Superboy, who still has that chrome skin and glowing red eyes, finds himself back in his home time again. As soon as he arrives in 1992, a 747 almost hits him in the sky, so he has to dodge it. Then his mind goes to how Necron defeated the Continuum. So he flies there right away, and his own younger body has already been drug off, taken to be assimilated. Now, the Necron from the future returns to grab Shadowstorm and drag him off to be assimilated. But Powerhouse fights Necron, and while they're fighting, Torch wakes up. We went with the idea that Torch's super speed works even when he's knocked out, and therefore, he's never knocked out as long as the other characters are. Also, by this point in our timeline, we realized through gameplay that something that had made the game challenging compared to other role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons was that while D&D gives you healing potions, we had nothing like that in our game world. So Torch, the team gadgeteer, invented his version of a healing potion. Jay, the game master, ruled that it would taste like medicine of some sort and be really bitter and gross. So for a while, they carried a vial of glowing blue liquid in their utility belts and could down it in a fight to get back some hit points. Powerhouse was the one who suggested they bake it into candy bar shapes that fit into a belt pouch well, and the sugar would literally help the medicine go down, making them not taste great, but they were infinitely preferable to the bitter taste of the pure liquid itself. So that said, as soon as Torch wakes up, he sticks one of those candy bars into the mouth of Shadowstorm and comically moves his jaw, helping him chew it up while he's still knocked out. As soon as bits of that regeneration bar go down Shadowstorm's throat, he gets back a few hit points, wakes up, and hits Necron with lightning bolts. Also, by this point in the timeline, the Continuum has picked up some reservists, characters like Aqua, Breeze, Frostbite, Gadget, Henning, and Tunnel Girl. So they show up and help out too. Everyone piles on Necron, so he goes back to 1997. Then, as one might expect, everyone looks at Powerhouse's new body of metal and asks what happened. So he tells them that the world is going to end in 5 years and they have to keep it from ever happening. And that's a pretty good point to stop for this adventure. This one was potentially confusing, and we will be bringing a lot of this up again when we do the video that actually starts on August 29th of 1997. When Jay ran this in 1992, it was partially because Terminator 2 was a recent movie at the time, and everyone I knew loved T2, and they were ripping off elements of it and putting it into their respective role playing games. Back to the Future 2 and 3 also came out around that time, so that was an influence as well, with moments like Powerhouse getting back from the future and having to dodge an airplane. We saw the DeLorean do that in Back to the Future 2. When Jay ran this in 92, he assumed we would quit playing before 1997 ever rolled around. So, ironically, his intention really was for it to be the end of the world. The way I took it, though, was that Powerhouse had seen one of many possible futures, sort of like Sarah Connor learning about Judgment Day, and that, like her, he now had a responsibility to keep that particular future from ever happening. So when he was Superboy, he felt the responsibility to uphold the good name of the Superman family. After Doctor Strange cast the spell that made everyone forget he ever was Superboy, including him, he became a character that was perhaps a bit more like Michelangelo, enjoying pizza and video games and not really taking anything too seriously. But now he has a big responsibility. So we see a huge change into the direction that he takes as a character, going from being sort of a Michelangelo to more of a Leonardo, which I enjoyed. I love character development, and as such, I really liked this adventure. I hope that you did too. If so, as always, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. And from everyone here at the longest running superhero role playing game on earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.